And good morning, everybody, and welcome to day 24 of our virtual field trips. My name's Chris. I run the Gristmill Gardens here in Karamias, and it is a soggy day outside. Just taking a look at our gardens. Maybe you can't see the weather from where you are. Let's see if I can show you anymore. No, it's just so gray and cloudy back there. You can't even see the mountains behind me. It's a pretty damp and, dare I say, dreary day, which is unusual since we live in the desert here. This is pretty dry country most of the time, but it's nice to have a little bit of rain. It'll help everything get a kickstart in the garden. Means I don't have to water for the day. Now, today's topic is cookbooks. It seemed like a good thing that I could do undercover. I'm out on our porch right now, and cookbooks are pretty amazing. We have quite the collection here at the Gristmills, you can imagine. Every time I go into a value village or a place like that, I can't help but look for old cookbooks. Some of them are cheesy, some of them are informative, some of them are just awful, but you have to have them anyways. But there's always ideas, there's always recipes, there's always suggestions, there's always encouragement in them. So I've got a huge selection of cookbooks here today on my table. But I'd actually like to start off with a modern one and talk a little bit about this one. So 2 years ago, I had the opportunity to host a wedding at about this time of year. It was May 1st. They wanted to be here because of the beautiful flowers and because, it was early in the season. They both worked in tourism. And so they said, we'd like to come and do the wedding here. And it was a beautiful, wonderful wedding. We also did the catering for it. We cooked all their food for 80 of their closest friends. The thing is, and I didn't really understand or appreciate this at the time, their friends were all worked in restaurants. So here we are doing our country cooking, doing our, rustic, straight from the farm food. And these are people that work in restaurants that put through 1,000 people a night. And it was really intimidating, and I'm really glad that we didn't find out about that until it actually came time to serve them. So we served them. We did something that we do really, really well, which was a delicious beef brisket. Spends 12 hours in the oven, cooking slow. Pretty wonderful stuff. And so many compliments afterwards. And that was so nice to hear because you're really intimidated. You're cooking for a whole bunch of chefs. Our background, none of us here are Red Seal chefs or anything like that. We just enjoy to cook and we get access to pretty amazing things. And so we have fun with it. And they loved it. They absolutely loved it. Well, afterwards, the next day after the party is done, the groom comes up to me and hands me a book and says, this is something that I thought you might like. I can tell you love food. You're obviously pretty good at it. I'm like, gosh, thanks. And he hands me this wonderful, wonderful book, which isn't actually a cookbook at all. It's called The Flavor Bible, obviously. And what it actually is, when you open it up, you can look up any ingredient you can think of. And it will tell you in a list, in a prioritized list, what goes well with that. Now, okay, if so, let's switch to a random page here. How about find something straightforward? Eggs, perfect. So what goes well with eggs? Well, obviously, asparagus goes well with eggs. Bacon and pancetta go well with eggs. In fact, here, take a little look. It actually gives you all sorts of ideas. There's dishes from chefs to sort of inspire you. And, as a tool in a kitchen, this book is absolutely fantastic for me. It gives you a chance to think about combinations that you might not have thought about otherwise. And the truth is, most people think of recipes, regular cooking recipes, savory cooking recipes, as some kind of instruction manual to follow exactly. But even the best recipe misses a lot of things. Even the best recipe doesn't tell you everything you probably need to know. You just have to go with your gut and kind of use that as signposts and find your way to the delicious food, whatever it is. Well, this isn't even signpost. This is just, here, try a couple of these things together. So anyways, it's a big book. It's not an inexpensive book, but and none of the things that I'm showing you today imply an endorsement. There's no commercial reason to do this. Nobody's paying me, but as a book on my bookshelf when it comes to cooking, this is a wonderful book to have. And I've really enjoyed spending some time with it. Now, most of the time, what we actually spend our times with is older books, of course. I love finding old books. Now, sometimes they're not that old. They're from the 50s or 60s. But there's a certain quaint charm. We used this book recently, actually, when we were making our sponge toffee. When I do our candy making recipes, some of the recipes come from this particular book right here, which is a pretty handy book. And I found this book the same place I find most of my books, which is sitting on the shelf in Value Village. And when you find a little treasure like this, you just kind of have to pick it up. So there's refrigerator fudge. But there's so many wonderful recipes in a book like that. Now, we can go back a lot farther if we want. And unfortunately, I'm using the big book that I'm going to show you next as the stand for my phone. So let's see if we can do this without dropping my phone. Haha! Nope! Didn't manage. Okay. This was another one I got recently. Let's see if I can make myself a little bit brighter here. There. Recently got from Value Village, of all places. And it is the White House Cookbook. Now, this cookbook has had editions going for a long time. This particular edition is from 1899. It is comprehensive in terms of the things that it talks about, because so many of these really old cookbooks are about more than just recipes. They're about techniques. They're about how to manage a kitchen. They're about all the other things that you might do in a kitchen that aren't cooking. So there's cleaning recipes in here. There is medicine recipes in here, because these are all things you would be putting together in your kitchen. A cookbook isn't necessarily just about the food that you're going to eat. So, this is a nice special little treasure that we've got. Now, of course, one of the things that we see a lot of too are cookbooks that come from particular companies. There was a time period, and it still happens today, but not as much, that companies would put out their own cookbooks to encourage you to use their product. And I think nobody was better and more shameless at that than flour companies, than companies that were producing flour. Because you can do so many different things with flour, but doing something like baking can feel incredibly intimidating. And so, you have things like, good old Five Roses, your Five Roses cookbook. Lots of other flour companies would come out with theirs as well and give you some good, solid, well-tested recipes that work with their product, of course. And you could get those. Another one would be Blue Ribbon, who produced all sorts of kitchen things, spices and stuff like that. And so this is a fun, very dense little book. Now, this one in particular was another one I found at Value Village, and I do think it's absolutely charming that it's got kid writing and colored pencil crayon all through it. Some kid had fun with it, and that just adds to the character. Apparently that was good. Now, there has been a big movement in the last 15, 20 years to reprint really old cookbooks. And if you ever find these, consider yourself really lucky. We've got a couple here. This one originally from 1877. This one from 1898. These are modern reprints, but are still useful today. They're bound quite nicely. Now, these books are really entertaining because I talked before, a few minutes ago, about the fact that any recipe book is going to be missing, always going to be missing steps. You're always going to be missing some bit of common sense that you might not have unless you grew up around a kitchen, unless you grew up around somebody who really knew to cook and showed you all these things. They're never going to include all the steps. Well, what's hilarious is that these books don't even bother. Most of them rarely have technique at all. Often they're just a list of ingredients, and you better know what to do. So, for example, let's find a good one here. Let's see. Of course, when I'm trying to do it, let's here, a recipe for white cake. 2 cupfuls of sugar, 1 cupful of butter, and so on and so forth. I'm glad that they're telling us that it's excellent, but there's a whole lot missing there in terms of what temperature do you bake it at? What other technique do you need to use to actually make this thing? And often, when these books, because they're collected from a whole bunch of people, there are a whole bunch of different white cake recipes all gathered together. So, but it's fascinating. Now, many of the measurements in these old books as well aren't the same as we would use today. They'll talk about a teacupful of this or a soup spoon of that. And you have to figure out, well, what do they mean? And the truth is, it's approximate anyways. Use your gut. But they're quite enjoyable and incredibly entertaining. So our replica books. Next, we go to the small scale books. And I don't know if you've ever belonged to a parent advisory council or a church or a community group that has printed their own cookbooks as a fundraiser. And sometimes you'll get things like, I love this one for Burnaby General Hospital. And it is a cookbook taken, from recipes from the people that work at the hospital. And it has, lots of recipes, cute little illustrations in it, all sorts of good stuff. And sometimes these are just incredibly fun. Many of these kinds of books will have little stories in them. They'll connect to particular people. This one in particular talks about. This was actually done in 1976. It turns out, and this is another thing that I found at Value Village. We have how about this? E. Oliver Elementary School, grade 6. Our favorite recipes. We have sort of self-published books like this, Back to Basics, Grandma's Recipes. These go back from the early pioneers to Canada in the 1940s, and all sorts of recipes in there. One of my favorites. Completely legal. Now, the Grismill itself actually did a self-published cookbook at one point, and we are actually going to do another one coming up this year. If you go to our website and click on the support link, you'll find the Grismill Foundation. They're the volunteers that help out with this place. They don't run it, but they support us in all sorts of amazing ways. And what they're planning to do this year is to publish a brand new cookbook. Now, they're going to take recipes from this old book, of course, but they're looking for more. So if you've got a recipe that you think that they should have, go onto that page. Go find the Grismill Foundation section under support and let them know about a recipe that you might have because we need to fill out a book like this. So this particular recipe book has all sorts of things like gristmill zucca cake. Zuccas are the giant gourds we grow. You can use zucchini instead, of course. This was actually cooked fairly often in our in our kitchen for people. There's old recipes from other old staff that used to work here, like Kyler and Christine, and it's a neat little document. It's part of the history of this place. Now, there are other oddities, other interesting books. I mean, I've got dozens here, and I'm not going to go through them all. You've got wonderful, strange little oddities like Pierre and Janet Burton's Canadian Food Guide. Everything's in warm brown colors, very appropriate to the time period. I love the fact that you've got things like drinking songs in it, poems, all sorts of things. And then there's just the reference books that we use all the time. One of my favorites is this book, We raised pigs a couple of years ago, and this is an amazing book for every kind of cured meat you can imagine. Basically, it's a book about how to use salt to do amazing things. We have a book on cheese making by a guy who actually did a cheese making workshop in my first year here 7 years ago. And the list goes on and on and on and on. If you've got cookbooks at home, maybe now's the time to go through them again. Maybe now's the time to find a recipe that that's on a page that has extra bits of stain on it, because those are the recipes that probably got used a lot. I know that my mother used to make this particular kind of boiled raisin cookie all the time, very cakey cookie. I still love it. She still makes it for me when she comes to visit. But that particular page is covered, absolutely covered in little dried bits of dust. The used pages are usually the ones that get a little bit messy. So maybe you should just think about going and finding your Joy of Cooking, if you've got that, or another cookbook that maybe you used to use a lot, and flip through it and find those pages. Find the worn pages, find the crinkled pages, the ones with the bent corner because you wanted to mark it. And think about making some of those recipes. It's always amazing how that'll transport you back to a different time period. Also, if you make something all the time, and you've got your kids, make sure they see you make it. Make sure that they are participating in that, because so often family recipes get lost just because nobody ever wrote anything down. Yeah, you just kind of made that tuna fish casserole however you made it or what have you. And nobody quite knows how, and so the recipe gets lost. Oh, jumbo raisin cookies. Those are exactly the cookies. Yeah. My mother was amazing. She kept us well fed. She was not an expert in the kitchen, and will admit to that. It's a real wonderful thing that both my sister and I do a lot of cooking now for lots of other people. We can credit my mom, just not for the skill. Now, somebody's saying that this is being shown backwards. That does happen with these videos because I'm using the front-facing camera on my phone. Unfortunately, I have a feeling on playback later, Facebook flips it, or when you watch it on YouTube later, it will flip everything back around as well. So if you're not seeing it the right direction, I'm sorry about that. So that's just a little bit. I mean, I could keep showing you cookbooks. There's all sorts of cookbooks that I love. Old random joyous cookbooks about things like things to make with roses. This is, rose recipes from olden times. There's a movement towards indigenous cooking, representing modern indigenous cuisine. This is for the Northwest Coast of BC. There are other amazing cookbooks out there right now exploring, indigenous foods, true local eating. Those are wonderful too. I could go on, and sometimes even books that aren't cookbooks per se, but that just give you wonderful, inspiring ideas. So, menus from an orchard table. This is from Joie Farm in Naramata, and it's just a collection of stories and menus from some of the amazing meals that happened over there over a long period of time. This really represents some of the foundations of, I guess I would call it Okanagan cuisine, what it is to cook in the Okanagan and Similkameen today. It was really inspired by foundational books like this. Now, I am going to sign off for now because, honestly, with all the rain outside, and it's raining like a foot and a half behind me, the wind is kind of picking up, I'm getting absolutely chilly. But I would like you to, spend a little time today, just take a quick look at your cookbooks. If your kids are watching today, maybe take them on a really simple cooking adventure, pick something easy, cook it together. Those are memories that are going to last them a long time, and that is as important as a science class or as a math class. In fact, you can include all of those things in. You can even include a little bit of history, a little bit of family history, just by cooking something together. So, take care of yourselves, take care of each other. Tomorrow, it will be a pre-recorded video that I'll be posting at about 10 o'clock. I have to make a trip down to Vancouver to drop off the first batch of preserves as part of our new pantry share program. I'm picking up lots of jars to put more preserves into, things like that. So I will not be live tomorrow, but I will have a field trip available for you anyways at about 10 o'clock in this space. If you can, please consider buying a season's pass to the site. As I've said before, click on the support link on our website. Buy yourself a season's pass. It helps pay our bills right now when we don't have all our usual revenue. Nobody's coming to the restaurant. Nobody's going out on tour. Nobody's staying in our campground. Nobody's coming to a concert. So your help is most appreciated. Anyways, again, my name's Chris. This is the Grismill and Gardens, and I will see you guys. Well, I won't see you, but I will be there tomorrow. Okay, take care. Bye-bye now.